అందరికీ నమస్కారములు. Today is another good day, 25th July 2023, that we are going to have a webinar from Nithin Sridhar ji. We had a webinar yesterday, and this will be a continuation of the webinar on Dharma Sasatras. This is a 3-day program. Tomorrow also will be there. So far, in this certificate course on Sanatana Dharma, second level course, advanced second level course, we have completed Vedas, Vedangas, Upanishads, Darshanas, and now we are on Dharma Shastras. So we will request Challa Chittibabu Garu to recite Vande Mataram, and then we will have Prarthana. After that, we will hand over the platform to the speaker. Challa Chittibabu Garu. Okay.
Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Sujalam Sufalam, Malaya Sitalam, Satya Syamala Mataram, Vande Mataram. Rudra Josna Pulakitayamini, Pulla Kusumita Drumadala Shobhini, Suvasini, Sumadhura Bhashini, Sukhadam Varadam Mataram, Vande Mataram. Vande Mataram.
ధన్యవాదములండి Challa Chittibabu Garu. Now let us request Ananthan ji to chant Prarthana, please.
Ekanimisha Dhyanam. Sarvebhyaha Namaskara. 1 minute meditation. Let us sit erect. Close the eyes gently. Relax the body. Total concentration on breath. Effortlessly. I just watch my breath. Trivaram, Omkaram. Om. 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 Gananam tva Ganapatigum Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashravastamam ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणस्पत आनः शृण्वन्नोतिभिः सीदसादनम् महागणपतये नमः। प्रणो देवी सरस्वती वाजेभिर्वाजिनीवती धीनामवित्र्यवतु वाग्देव्यै नमः। गुरुरेव गतिर् गुरुमेव भजे गुरुणैव सहास्मि नमो गुरवे। न गुरोः परमं शिशुरस्मि गुरोः मतिरस्ति गुरौ मम पाहि गुरो। ज्ञानानन्दमयं देवं निर्मलस्फटिकाकृतिम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानां हयग्रीवमुपास्महे। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानामालयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ। सर्वेभ्यः नमस्कारः।
ధన్యవాదములండి అనంతన్ గారు. Now let us request Sridhar ji to take over the platform, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Let me begin with a small prayer. Vakratunda Mahakaya Koti Surya Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Sarvamangala Mangalye Shive Sarvartha Sadike Sharanye Trayambake Gauri Narayani Namostute. Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyamavat Vyapta Dehaya Shri Dakshina Murtaye Namaha. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Bharati Karuna Patram Bharati Padabhushanam Bharati Padamarudham Bharati Tirthamashraye. Vidya Vinaya Sampannam Vitaragam Vivekinam Vande Vedanta Tattvajnam Vidushekara Bharati. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Namaste again to everyone. In the yesterday's session, we saw a brief introduction to different facets of Dharma, different definitions of Dharma. And one of the definitions that we saw was also related to how to acquire Dharma. So I'll be just touching upon a bit more about this aspect in today's class, and also taking up some of the some aspects of the thematic examination of the subject matter of the Dharma Shastra. I mean, Dharma Shastra is a vast ocean. It is not possible to actually examine the type of content, type of subjects dealt with it. But I will be just touching upon some aspects, some issues that would help anybody who is interested to make a study of Dharma Shastra. It will act as a guide. So with this opening remarks, let me share my presentation. I hope this is visible.
Visible.
Okay, thank you. So, when we speak about dharma, adharma, the first question, of course, is apart from the definition, is about how do we acquire this knowledge? Can we acquire, because there is one statement in one of the texts which says, dharma and adharma do not come and say that I am dharma, I am adharma. No, actions cannot speak for itself saying that I am good action, please perform me, I am bad action, please perform me. So we need a basis to understand what action constitutes dharma and what action constitutes adharma. And this designation of a certain action as dharma and adharma, as we saw in the last class, has a particular meaning and context, that it is not a light term to be used in a vague manner. When we designate an action as dharma, it has a particular meaning in the sense that that action should be capable of leading us, capable of generating to us, giving us in the future sukha, happiness, swarga, heaven, and chitta shuddhi, purification of the mind. And adharma is that those action which gives the opposite, dukkha, naraka, and chitta bhranti and bandhana. Now, how do we know what action can give this? Yesterday, I spoke about this in a very brief manner, that in Hindu theory of knowledge or Hindu epistemology, we recognize basically epistemology is theory of knowledge, it's a study of knowledge, how knowledge arises, to whom the knowledge arises, and what are the means for acquiring knowledge. This is the subject matter of epistemology, which we call as Pramana Shastra. So in Hindu darshanas, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Vedanta, Mimamsa, all of them dedicate some time to the enunciation, to understanding the pramanas. Especially Nyaya dedicates a lot of time. But every darshana enunciates this about what pramanas they accept. So if we put together all of them, we have 6 pramanas, while Nyaya accepts only 4 of them, Vaisheshika only 2 of them. We have Prabhakara Mimamsa. There are 2 schools of Mimamsa, Prabhakara and Bhatta. Prabhakara Mimamsa accepts only 5 of them. It is only the Bhatta Mimamsa, that is Mimamsa after Kumarila Bhatta, and Advaita Vedanta that accepts all the 6 pramanas. And so what are these 6 pramanas? Let us see very briefly. They are Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, Anupalabdhi, Shabda, and of course there's one more, Arthapatti. Now what is this Pratyaksha? Pratyaksha is very straightforward. Pratyaksha is direct perception. Direct perception means it is perception through your eyes. Pratyaksha is perception through your ears. All the indriyas are used, your senses, your sense of touch, the power of seeing, through hearing, through smelling, taste and touch. All of them, we use it. Through them, whatever knowledge we gain, that is called as direct knowledge of pratyaksha. In our darshanas, we say this pratyaksha happens when the indriyas themselves go out and come in contact with the object. So there are different prakriyas. How this pratyaksha happens in different darshanas, explain it in a different way. We need not go there. The second is Anumana, which is basically logical inference. And Anumana is again a very, very important pramana. A good example for Anumana, very relatable example is fire on the mountain. You know, mountain hill is far away. We don't actually see the fire. But what we are seeing is that there is a smoke on the mountain. From seeing the smoke on the mountain, we are able to infer using logical inference or anumana. We are able to come to a conclusion that there must be fire on the mountain. Why? Because on the basis of universal concomitance, on the basis of the fact that everywhere else in our own homes, wherever there are fire, there will be smoke. So there is a universal connection between fire and smoke that we already know from other sources. Based on that, we are doing an inference that because there is a smoke on the mountain, there must be a fire, because wherever there is fire, only there the smoke is. So this kind of logical inference is called as anumana. And anumana is always has to have a basis. So in this example, anumana is based upon pratyaksha, that is, we are actually seeing the smoke. But anumana could also be based on shabda, that is what we do in Vedanta and Mimamsa, right? We base the words of the Shastra, and on that anumana is also used. So Shabda is another independent source of knowledge, wherein Shabda basically means word, and Shabda Pramana is defined, for example, in Nyaya Shastra as Apta Vachana, that is words of a verbal testimony of a Apta, a trustworthy source. And such trustworthy source could be a Shastra, written text such as, say, Veda, which is the most trustworthy source because it is apaurushaya, it is not a human composition, therefore it is free from any form of human defects or bias and prejudice. Or it could be from a trustworthy people who you can trust. For example, if you want to go to Himalayas, you will ask a friend who has already been to Himalayas about how to go to Himalayas. So that friend is a trustworthy person, you know, because he has already gone to Himalayas. Similarly, the rishis are those who have already seen the truth. They are Shrotriya Brahmanishtas. They are the Brahmanishtas. They already know the truth. They already have traveled the path. So their teachings are trustworthy because they already have attained the result using that path. So that is what these smritis are. By Manu, Yagyavalkya, Parashara, Narada. They all are knowers of Brahman. They are all knowers of Veda. They are Shrotriyas. And they are also Brahmanishtas. They are also Dharmanishtas. So the smritis are Shabda Pramana, just as Shruti, Shruti Smriti Itihasa Purana. We will see just in a bit. So Anumana can happen even based on such a Shabda. Now there is Upamana, which is comparison and analogy. Like you do not know how a wild bull looks. You ask somebody, he says, look, this is the village bull. The wild bull is very similar to this, but it has certain unique features. This is not inference. This is not inference. This is analogy. This is knowledge gained through analogy. And then there is Arthapatti, which is postulation, derivation from circumstances. A very good example in the tradition is that Devadatta, there are two facts. Devadatta is becoming fat. Second fact is Devadatta is not eating food in the morning. So from these two facts, we can understand, we can postulate that Devadatta must be eating in the night. Otherwise, how would he be becoming fatter and fatter, right? So this kind of postulation is called as Arthapatti, and this is also considered a very important pramana and independent pramana for independent source of valid knowledge. And this is very much utilized in the Mimamsa Shastra. For example, the Apurva we discussed in the last class was put forward and established through this this Arthapatti Pramana. Then there is Anupalabdhi. Anupalabdhi means non-perception. A good example is there is a vase in your hall. It has been there for many months. One day you come back from office, your Ardhangi must have changed the arrangements in the house the way they do, and you suddenly notice the absence of the vase that was there. This perception of the absence is Anupalabdhi. Upalabdhi is availability, Anupalabdhi is non-availability. This perception of non-presence, not presence of that entity which was previously there, is Anupalabdhi. Okay, so these are the 6 independent sources of valid knowledge, independent pramanas. Now the question is, why did I say yesterday that Dharma can only be known by Shabda? The main reason for this is that when we speak about Dharma, we are speaking about karma phala. In the form of, we spoke about apurva, that is a karmic merit in the form of potency, which is either punya or it is a karmic demerit in the form of potency, which is papa. These two, for example, they are adrishta. You cannot perceive it because they are potential, they are a potency. You can perceive an action such as yajna being conducted, or if you write an exam, you can perceive that exam is being written, and you can perceive the result of the exam, that whether you have passed first rank or second rank. But you cannot perceive this potency called punya papa. Why? Let me use that example of exam only. That will also answer questions such as, why do we see in Pratyaksha some people, say corrupt people, enjoying life, not being punished? This example that corrupt people, we see corruption everywhere, people committing crimes, but they are not punishing. This is a good example that shows that Pratyaksha is not reliable. Pratyaksha cannot be a valid source for knowing what is Dharma and what is Adharma, because Pratyaksha is misleading. You are committing crimes, but you appear to be enjoying your spoiled, whatever you have earned. How is it so? Then is committing crime Dharma? You will ask that. That cannot be so. So we'll understand why this through a example of the examination. Now, when you write an exam, there are different ways you can write. You can study for the exam, put effort, genuine effort, honest effort, write the exam. Or you don't put an effort at all, you just go there, write whatever possible. Or there is third way, you don't put an effort, you go there, you copy from others and write the exam. Now, in the first case, most likely you will pass the exam in good marks because you have prepared. But sometimes it happens, you fail even then. But mostly you will pass. In the second case, since you have not prepared, you will fail. But in the third case, you have not prepared, but because you are copying, you will pass. So now in the third case, you were seeing that there is an immediate result in the form of passing of the exam, whether you prepare or whether you copy. The result is same. But the two cases are different in the sense, if you have prepared and you're passing the exam, you're using honest means. There is a punya, a merit which is adding to you, which will result in sukha in the future, not just this exam result, but outside of that also. It adds to your quota of purifying you, the chitta shuddhi. But then there is this cheating in the exam. It is cheating, which is adharma, which is a violation of the shastric tenet of satya, for example. Now this, you may pass the exam, you may immediately reap a good fruit and enjoy it, but there is a papa potency which has been generated. And that also will result eventually, and you will have to face it in form of some difficulty in life, in the form of some dukkha. So you can see the exam and the exam result, but you will not be able to see through your direct perception this punya and papa. Similarly, there is one more case I said, you prepare for the exam, but you are not able to pass it. There is some obstacle, some unexplainable obstacle. What is the cause of that obstacle? It is your Purva Janma karma. The Purva Janma karma, the Purva Janma Papa karma is coming to in this life as an obstacle. That is why we see many people putting lot of hard work, but they are not actually getting the fruit that their hard work deserves. There are always some obstacles, but there are some others who put in a little bit of effort and they're reaping great fruits. It is all about where we stand in our journey, what we performed in the past lives, what is happening now. So past is adrishta. You cannot see direct perception. So using direct perception, you cannot also infer it. Inference also, you cannot base on the perception, because the perception is little bit misleading. So if you infer based on perception, then you will say that corrupt people or criminals are living a good life, so let us all perform crimes. So that will be disastrous. So upamana and anupalabdhi and arthapatti are also not useful here much. So for dharma, for knowing what generates punya, what generates papa, what leads to sukha, what leads to dukkha, what leads to swarga, what leads to naraka, that is to the knowledge about karma and karma phala. There is no other way than to rely upon shabda pramana, that is shastra pramana. So shastra is giving, by revealing this knowledge, it is doing great service to us, because it is helping us, it is giving us one tool through which we can control our future. We cannot control the past, we can only act in the present and control the future in a limited manner. So that is why Bhagavan Krishna says in Gita, Shastras are your guide for understanding what actions to be performed and what is to be avoided. Okay, I dealt with more time than needed on this, I think. We will just skip this, because we already discussed this yesterday, that the primary sources of acquiring knowledge of Dharma is Veda, Smriti, Itihasa, Puranas. Veda is distinct in the sense that it is apaurishaya and eternal. Therefore, it is most important, and it is the only independent pramana, independent shabda pramana for Dharma. All others, the Smriti Itihasas, are dependent upon Veda. Smriti, among the others, Smritis are the most important, because they are the compositions of various rishis such as Manu, Yagyavalkya, Parashara, Narada, etc., who had deep knowledge about Veda, deep knowledge about Dharma. In fact, they had direct comprehension of Dharma through their yogic accomplishments. Therefore, they simplified, they codified, they created a technical treatise on Dharma in the form of Smritis for the guidance of humanity. So what is found in the Veda in a very cryptic manner or in a very scattered manner, they put together in a very codified manner, in a very technically sound manner for us, for the benefit of us. Therefore, Manusmriti says that in all matters, Shruti and Smriti, Veda and Dharma Shastra should not be criticized, should not be subjected to an examination using reasoning alone, because dharma shows forth from them, because they are the pramanas for dharma. So we have to accept what they tell as truth and then analyze the implications of that. Otherwise, any other approach will be misleading. And Itihasa Puranas are in turn based upon Vedas and Smritis, and they also constitute pramana. Apart from these primary sources, we said yesterday, Sadachara, good conduct of various elders and gurus and acharyas, and Atmanutushti, our own agreeability to our own conscience, they also are secondary sources of dharma. Now, yeah, what are the implications for understanding Dharma Shastra Smritis as Pramanas? A little bit reflection on this is necessary because there is a lot of misconception about Smriti Shastras today. One of the popular misconception prevalent today is that Manu and other Smritis is that they are seen as law books that stipulate the laws of their times, that is legal documents, or they are seen as religious books in the sense of biblical sense, in the sense of a Bible, which provides commandments that were hegemonically imposed on society through religious institutions similar to church. However, both these are problematic assertions about Manu and other Smritis. They are incorrect assertions. Why? Because Manu and other Smritis, as we have just discussed, they are basically Pramana Shastras. So, being a Pramana Shastras, their concern is only with revealing the knowledge about Dharma, especially about the connection between Karma and Karma Phala. So, they are not law books in the sense of they are not a legal document or a constitution documents, which were hegemonically imposed on society. Nor were they book of commandments in a biblical sense. This does not mean that there is no legal matter in Dharma Shastra. There is, as we will see shortly. It contains legal matter, but the legal matter is also not contained in the sense of modern sense of law books or constitutions. They are contained in the sense of guidance. And it is not a commandment in the biblical sense, because there was church and there was a forceful enforcement in the Christian society, but that is absent in our society. However, this does not mean that there are no stipulations and commandments at all in Dharma Shastra. There is in the Veda itself. The tenets of Dharma are enunciated in the form of Vidhi and Nisheda. Vidhi is prescriptions, Nisheda is prohibitions. They are enunciated in the Veda as well as in Manu and other Smritis. So they are broad guidelines. However, they are broad guidelines. They are commandments, definitely. They stipulate things, they prohibit things, but they are broad guidelines in the sense that they are binding in only one sense. The power to bind is only in the one sense that they are revealing about karma phala relationship, and this karma phala relationship is binding. Whether we accept them or not, a particular action will definitely gives rise to that particular result. You perform adharma, it gives rise to dukkha, naraka, etc. And you perform dharma, it gives rise to sukha, swarga, etc. So action is what is binding. It is not the shastra per se. So Dharma Shastra is binding in this sense that it reveals knowledge about karma phala, which is binding. So it is just like saying gravity exists. Gravity is binding because physics says so. I mean, physics is not inventing gravity. Physics is mainly saying that gravity exists, which is an existing phenomena. So karma phala is also existing phenomena. And Smriti Shastra as a Pramana Shastra, they reveal this knowledge, this causal relationship between karma, karma phala, which is eternal, unchanging, and beyond the grasp of the mind and the senses. This means that, contrary to the popular misconception that Smritis are products of their time and context, sure, Smritis were written at some point of time, but the teachings of the Smritis, are they really transient in the sense they were applicable 2000 years before, but they are outdated today? Because that is the popular misconception. But contrary to this, the fact is, Smritis being a Pramana Shastras revealed essential principles of Dharma, namely the eternal causal relationship between different categories of karmas and their fruits, karma phalas. And this relationship itself is eternal, unchanging, and beyond socio-political influence of changing conditions. And hence, Smritis are as relevant today as they were in the past, and they will remain relevant in the future. Because karma phala relationship, that knowledge about dharma adharma will always be relevant. Because human desire to attain happiness will always be there. And dharma is the means to attain happiness. So what is changing and dependent on situation are not the essential principles of dharma, but the contextualizations of the dharmic teachings to address changing real world situations, and thus causing diversity in the application of the dharmic principles. So what people mistake as dharma is always changing is actually the changing nature of the society, as a result of which there is a need to contextualize the teachings of the dharma to address the emerging issues. So there is a change, so to speak, there is a diversity in the application of the dharmic principles. There is no change in the dharmic principles themselves. Say, for example, it is not that in Satya Yuga ahimsa was dharma and Kali Yuga suddenly ahimsa has become adharma, because we see lot of violence everywhere, right? So this is a very simple example. Just because untruth or for speaking falsehood has become common today, it does not mean that falsehood has become dharma today. It is still the truth which is dharma today and not falsehood. So the point here is to understand the shastras, to understand dharma shastras or moksha shastras, whatever the shastra is, the correct way to approach is with shraddha. So if you remember, if you have studied the Vedanta, one of the qualities required is shraddha, that is trust in the words of Guru and the Shastras. And without this trust, the study, the understanding, the unfolding of knowledge does not begin at all. You cannot approach Dharma Shastra with suspicion, with thinking that it is a biased text, it is a prejudiced text, it is a harmful text, and then expect Dharma Shastras to reveal something beneficial. That is not possible, because whatever it is being revealed, your mind is already closed. So you have to approach with Shraddha. And this Shraddha is not blind faith, it is a trust that the text, the Shastra is a pramana, it is revealing valid knowledge. And when you engage with such trust, the trust eventually transforms into conviction, and finally into one of actualization of the truth expounded in the Shastras. This is what I call as hermeneutics of Shraddha. So till now we have discussed the definition of dharma and the means of acquiring valid knowledge about dharma, and the approach needed to be taken to understand, to approach needed to be taken to engage with the Dharma Shastra. Now let us come to the subject matter of Dharma Shastra. Now here I am not going into the actual subject matter in the sense of what are the topics That is that. In tomorrow's session, we will discuss some of the subject matter, namely Samanya Dharma and Vishesha Dharma, Varnashrama Dharma. Little bit of them, because that is what is most relevant to us. But here, by subject matter, what I mean is a thematic look into different kinds of principles involved, different kinds of divisions of the subject matter that is there in Dharma Shastra. So one of the ways to look at the subject matter Dharma Shastra is to look it from a thematic perspective. So thematically, the content of Dharma Shastras are broadly divided into three themes: Achara, Vyavahara, and Prayaschitta. Achara is the practice, which is the core of Dharma Bodhana. It is under Achara we will see about samskaras, that is all this Upanayana, Vivaha, Antyakriye, right from the birth to death, all the samskaras that we do, we see it under Achara. And under Achara, we also have the teachings about Samanya Dharma and Vishesha Dharma. Vishesha Dharma is about, for example, Grihastha Dharma, how you should live as a householder, how you should live as a brahmachari student, how you should live as a brahmana, as a kshatriya, what is Raja Dharma. So all this comes under the Achara. Then there is Vyavahara, which is legal jurisprudence. So I mentioned that there is a portion of Dharma Shastra which deals with legal matter. So it deals with how a Raja, how a king should give judgment. What are the again it deals with karma phala here. What kind of crimes require is of what magnitude? Therefore, what kind of punishment is required? So all these things are dealt with in Vyavahara, which is about legal jurisprudence. And it also deals with questions such as adoption, such as bribery, murder, stealing, and all these things of legal matter. Then there is Prayaschitta. Prayaschitta goes hand in hand with Achara. Achara is about Dharmacharana. If you deviate from the Dharmacharana, then, as I said, there is a demerit created, there is a papa potency created. So to get rid of this papa potency before it fructifies, certain other acts can be done, which is called as prayaschitta karma, which are basically expiations, basically tapasya, which you do to burn off your papa potency of papa, right? So the achara is the core, and it is what is relates to the conduct, practice, custom, deals with the karmas of an individual. So as I mentioned, Vishesha Dharma and Samanya Dharma. Samanya Dharma are universal ethical principles. Vishesha Dharma are context specific principles that applies to different individuals, different communities at different times. There is Varna, Ashrama, Desha, Kala, gender, relationship, so on and so forth. So this is about one way of dividing the subject matter. And this another point is about Prayaschitta is the purpose of the Prayaschitta is to purify oneself. That is what I meant by when I say removing or destroying or becoming free of the karmic deep merit or papa, because that what purification is all about. So Chitta Shuddhi is also generated through this Prayaschitta karmas. So this is one way of looking at it, was the thematically there is the subject matter of Dharma Shastras or any Smriti you take it up. There is Achara, Vyavahara and Prayaschitta. However, there are other ways of looking at it. Another way that the material or the content of the Dharma Shastras can be understood is on the basis of the nature of the subject matter, in the sense that what kind of karma phala is being discussed. I mean, Dharma Shastra, of course, discusses about actions and the fruits of actions. So these actions, the kind of actions that are discussed, can be grouped into different categories based on the nature of the fruits that they give. And in such a division, or you can such content can be divided into 5 types: drishtartha, adrishtartha, drishta, adrishtartha, nyayamula, and anuvada. Now, what is a drishtartha? Drishta artha. Drishta means that which is visible, that which is tangible. So drishtartha refers to the subject matter that which deals with the tangible and seen objects, this worldly purposes, such as those related to artha and kama. You have many such subject matter within the Dharma Shastra, which deals with results which are visible, tangible. We gave example yesterday class about pratisheda. Do not eat fermented food. Here, not eating fermented food, there is a direct result in a visible, tangible result, because fermented food will upset the stomach or something like that, right? So it is an example of drishtartha. But there is also adrishtartha, which is invisible results, intangible results. So this is the second category: intangible, unseen, and otherworldly purposes. So under this, if we take the Purushartha format of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, the Artha and Kama comes under the Drishtartha, whereas Dharma, Swarga, and Moksha comes under Adrishtartha. We are all speaking about here Dharma Shastra only. I'm just bringing in the Purushartha perspective. So the matters which are related to Punya, Papa, which have a ethical bearing, which are related to Swarga, Moksha, all these are unseen and intangible. So there are such subject matters also in the Dharma Shastra which deals with Adrishtartha. Now there are other subject matters, other actions which are both tangible and intangible. It has a bearing of both, that which is visible and which is invisible. So these are called as Drishta Adrishtartha. And there is Nyayamula, which is basically refers to subject matter based on universal maxims, universally known understanding. And Anuvada is basically refers to subject matter seen by the wise and the knowers of the Veda. So basically, Anuvada is a repetition of the Vedic matter. So what is relevant for our purposes is the Drishtartha, Adrishtartha, and Drishta Adrishtartha, because they tell us about the kind of result that a particular prescription or a guideline, when implemented, would give rise to. While both Adrishtartha and Drishta Adrishtartha have unseen and transcendental results, and hence they're absolute, eternal, and always valid and applicable, the Drishtartha part, which deals with tangible results, they are not absolute, they are not eternal. They are subject to time, location, and context. So this distinction is very important for understanding and interpreting Dharma Shastras. So while reading the text, while reading the guidelines, we have to ask ourselves whether this teaching is with, there is an invisible element, whether there is an adrishta element, or it is purely about drishta element, what is tangible. If it is about tangible element, then we can actually compare it with pratyaksha, verify it with pratyaksha, whether such is the case even today or not, or it is not applicable. But you cannot do that with adrishta elements. But in any case, if we compare this adrishta thing with achara, prayaschitta, etc., that we dealt, achara and prayaschitta portions of Smriti predominantly deal with adrishtartha, and to some extent with drishta adrishtartha purposes as well. Whereas it is the vyavahara portion of the Smritis which predominantly deal with drishtartha and drishta adrishtartha. So as a result, while the teachings enunciated in under Achara and Prashchitta, they're predominantly absolute and not subject to socio-political changes. The teachings of Vyavahara is mixed. There are elements which are not absolute, which are subject to socio-political changes, which can be contextualized and changed in that sense, which whose literal reading need not be implemented, whose essential spirit has to be understood. But there are also in the Vyavahara, there are elements which deal with Adrishta also. So they also have to be understood. So this is another way of looking at it. So for Drishtartha, I already gave the example about fermented food. For Adrishtartha, the example is again, as mentioned yesterday, Yagya Swarga Kamo Yajeta. If you desire Swarga, you have to perform Yagya. This is a very typical example. So this performance of Yagya leads to Swarga. Swarga is a Adrishta example, right? So you cannot see it. Now, there are certain yagyas which are drishtartha also. For example, Putra Kameshti yagya, or there are yagyas for bringing rains. So there, the bringing rain will be a visual result, whether that yagya has fructified or not, right? Now, so similarly, so there are many such examples that can be given for drishtartha also. There are actions, for example, I cannot recall any particular example at this moment for drishtartha, but one example, yeah, it could be that under Vyavahara, you see this all kinds of punishments. But at the same time, under Prashchitta, there is also a mention of the kind of naraka and the kind of karma phala you get for different crimes. So there is a aspect of secular punishment which is drishtartha, but there is also the aspect of naraka, etc., which is adrishtartha. So hence it is drishta adrishtartha. So these are some basic ideas to keep in mind while studying Dharma Shastra. So you might have noticed I'm not actually going to the content of the Dharma Shastra per se, what it says, this chapter says this, that, but giving you certain background information how to understand this Dharma Shastra if you were to take up such a study in detail. So the third way of classifying the subject matter of Dharma Shastra is by their mode of expression. I already mentioned the terms such as Vidhi Nisheda. So the Vedic statements basically can be classified into 5 types. The Veda Vakyas are 5 types. There is Vidhi Vakya, there is Nisheda Vakya. These two are called Chodhana Vakyas. And there is Arthavada and there is Namadheya and Mantra. So the same is applicable to Smritis also. Vidhi Nisheda and Arthavada are what is important for us. Namadheya and Mantra are secondary for our purposes. So Vidhi is injunctive statement which induces one to act. That is Swarga Kama Yajeta. So it is inducing us. Oh, I need heaven. When you read that, if you desire heaven, you have to perform yagya. By reading that, there is an inducement in my mind. Oh, if I want heaven, then I have to do this yagya. So let me do this yagya. So that is the kind of inducement. That is what Vidhi Vakya is. It is not a commandment in the sense that the Vakya does not have the power to force you to do anything. The Vakya has the power to induce you, to inspire you, and then it is up to you whether you do it or not. So Vidhi are the injunctions, stipulations which say what is Dharma, what actions when performed are beneficial. Nisheda are prohibitions which are opposite of injunctions. They are negative precepts which prohibit prescribed actions that are either injurious to one or disadvantageous. Arthavada are basically commendatory or depreciatory texts. Arthavadas are many texts, many types. There is prashamsa, that is commendatory. There is ninda, that is depreciatory. So, say an action is being praised. In Mahabharata, we have an instance of, when Yudhishthira is supposed to do Rajasuya Yagya, he did not had any desire to do it. I mean, he did not even plan to do it originally. But I think then Narada came, if I am not mistaken. Then he praised ancestors of Yudhishthira such as Harishchandra as attaining Indraloka and all those things by on the basis of performing Rajasuya Yagya. So this praising of Rajasuya Yagya, of its benefits and how it helped his ancestor to gain Indraloka and all, this is what is Arthavada. This prashamsa, the purpose of this prashamsa is to indicate that Rajasuya Yagya or any action is to be performed. So Arthavada serves to supplement the Vidhi Vakya or the Nisheda Vakya. Similarly, there are depreciatory statements such as that person or this thing did this and he went to Naraka, he suffered. So this is about Nisheda Vakya. So if you do some bad activity, it resulted in some bad results. So such statements are Arthavadas, which is supplementing the Nisheda statement. There are many such examples in the Vedas and the Smritis. And there are also Arthavadas which are called as Bhutarthavada, which is basically about anecdotes from our past. They may be historical anecdotes, they may be metaphorical or history of the Devatas, so to speak. See, history, the English term has a lot of ideological baggage. So it is a human history. But when we speak of Bhutarthavada, it basically past events. And that could be in the human past, in the material past, that could be past in divine past, when the stories about Gandharvas, Devatas, etc. These are all also Arthavadas. So the purpose of the Arthavada passage, Arthavada gives knowledge on its own, right? We learn many things from these stories. But their main purpose, as far as Dharma Shastras, as far as Mimamsa is concerned, is to supplement the Vidhi and Nisheda statements. Is to either supplement already existing Vidhi Nisheda statements or indirectly indicate a Vidhi Nisheda statement through these Arthavada statements. So example of Vidhi Vakya already given, Sarga Kamo Yajeta. Example of Nisheda Vakya is also we discussed Na Kalanjam Bakshay, do not eat Kalanja food, fermented food. So a basic familiarity with all these, the different themes, Achara, Prayaschitta, Vyavahara, different end goals such as Drishtartha, Adrishtartha, Drishta, Adrishtartha, and different modes of expression of the subject matter, that is Vidhi, Nisheda, Arthavada. This is very vital for properly understanding, interpreting the text. Otherwise, what happens when you read the text, you will be misinterpreting them, you will be interpreting them beyond the scope of what they are saying, or you will be dismissing them without understanding them. There will be a lot of misconceptions that could be avoided. So one example, I think it's already time. I will just very quickly discuss one example where how this kind of subject matter understanding is very useful. So for example, in the Manusmriti, there is a statement about Pita Rakshatu Kaumari in respect to women. It says that when the girl child is young, it is father who protects her. When she has become an adult, the husband has to protect her. When she has become old age, the son has to protect her. Na stri swatantram arhati. She does not deserve to be independent. Now, this has been so much abused and raided and misinterpreted, and by modern scholars. They say that this is the example of patriarchy and misogyny of the Dharma Shastras, how they are anti-women, how they oppress women, how they discriminate against women, how they do not want to give freedom to women. But the fact is, none of this is true. We have to understand that the whole verse is has a perspective, has a subject, has a context there. And what kind of text it is, what is the subject matter? It is being spoken under whether achara, whether vyavahara or prayaschitta, what it is. The fact is, here the swatantra does not mean na stri swatantram arhati. Here the swatantra word has a meaning of unprotectedness. So the actual meaning, if you read the commentaries, is that the women should never be left unprotected. That is, the women have to be protected, from all kind of dangers. That is the purpose here. And that such a protection could be taken many forms, including teaching what is good, including teaching what is dangerous, what should be avoided, including imparting knowledge and training that is needed to protect oneself. Then swatantra could be understood in a different way also. In the Dharma Shastras, the ideal is paratantra, not swatantra. Why? I mentioned in yesterday's class, who is an adhikari for practicing dharma? One who is swatantra, that is one who is pursuing artha kama in an unrestrained manner, in a completely free manner without putting any restraint. Such a person is not eligible for the studying Dharma Shastra or practicing Dharma, because he has no control over his sense and mind. So such a kind of independence is what is being depreciated. Because the ideal of Dharma Shastra is that one has to willingly and voluntarily submit oneself to the mandates of the Shastras for attaining higher well-being. Because without such restrainment of the mind and the senses, no practice of dharma possible, no practice of moksha possible. For any sadhana, there must be indriya nigraha, right? So the subject matter, these vidhi, nisheda, whether something is a vidhi, whether something is an arthavada, all these are important. We see this in discussion in Manusmriti about, say, meat eating. We see this about samskaras. There are many places this vidhi, nisheda and all this come into play. And achara, vyavahara, of course. For example, in Manusmriti, we have achara for the maximum chapters are on achara. And vyavahara, there are 1 or 2 chapters, I think. Prashchitta is 1 chapter. So this knowledge is helpful. In tomorrow's session, we will discuss the actual content of the Dharma Shastra, but we will limit ourselves to only 2 aspects. That is, within the Achara, we will limit ourselves to Samanya Dharma and Vishesha Dharma. We will focus more on the Samanya Dharma, but we will touch upon Vishesha Dharma also. And I will be sharing some material today. I will be sharing with Babuji about the presentations that I have done. I will be also sharing links to some of my articles, which are the basis for this presentations. So this would be good. I would also share a link to this book. In fact, I'll share the link to the book. You can see in the background. This is on Samanya Dharma. This will be very helpful for you. It's a just a 100-page book. It is you can just read it in a single or a double sitting within, say, 2 hours at best. So do read this book. It's available on Amazon. It's available on Subbu publication. It's available on Kindle also. You can download it from Kindle if you don't want a paperback. So tomorrow we'll be discussing Samanya Dharma from this book. I'll read out some excerpts from this book. So I will be sharing some material with Babuji to share with you all, the presentations primarily, but also few of my articles, few of my talks. I will share them for subsequent reading and watching, and you will see some material being repeated, but that is a good thing. More repetition means more clarity of understanding. Thank you very much. I am open for questions. Please put your questions. Like yesterday, I will just read out the questions and answer them. That will be okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I saw while I was speaking, there were some questions. I will just see them. Does Itihasa Purana also not fall in the Smriti category? They do in some sense, yes. There are, these terms are often used in different manners in different contexts. In some manner, yes, Shruti is Veda and everything else is a Smriti, because everything else is a human composition. They are all Smriti, you can say. So in that sense, even Itihasa Puranas are Smritis. But having said this, it is also important to understand that the Ashtadasha Vidyasthanas that I mentioned, it clearly differentiates Puranas from Dharma Shastras. It clearly explicitly mentions Puranas as a separate category from Dharma Shastras, and Dharma Shastra refers to Smriti proper. That is the Manu and Yagyavalkya and other Smritis. And under Smritis itself, there is another kind of classification. There is something called as Mahasmriti and Anusmriti. Under Mahasmriti, we have actually the Dharma Sutras, and Shadangas, the Vedangas, all the 6 Vedangas, the Shiksha, Chandas, Kalpa, all those are there. They are also considered as Mahasmritis. And we have Dharma Sutras, etc., also considered as Mahasmritis. Dharma Sutras are those manuals of Dharma specifically for some specific communities which follow those sutras. Say there is the Yajurvedis follows the Apastamba Sutra, for example. There's Baudhayana Sutra. There are many other such things. But and in that scheme, Manu and Yagyavalkya, Parashara, etc., which are more generic texts of Dharma, they are called as Anusmriti, the smaller Smritis. Here, the greater or smaller is only relative in the sense that one is specific. One is, for example, one who belongs to Yajurveda Shakha, Apastamba Sutra becomes more important in his day-to-day life, because that is what he belongs to that Shakha. So then the Manusmriti, etc., becomes secondary to him. In that sense, that becomes Anusmriti. But in general, when we speak about Dharma Shastra, it is the Manu, Yagyavalkya, Parashara, but also the Dharma Sutras are also taken into account. These are all the Smritis. Itihasa Puranas are a separate category. Sometimes Itihasas can be classified under Dharma Shastra, some Smritis itself. For example, Shankaracharya in Bhagavad Gita, in his Bhashyas, in his Upanishad or Bhagavad Gita, whatever Bhashyas, when he refers to Bhagavad Gita or when he quotes from Mahabharata, he calls it Smriti only, right? Or Itihasas can also be classified under Puranas also, because they both have some content which are very common to each other. So there are different ways of doing things, different ways of organizing knowledge. But the point is, Veda, Smriti, Itihasa, Puranas, they are all sources of Dharma. Book of Job, our Shruti or Smriti is equivalent to Book of Job or has any relevance in the present society as mentioned. I don't know what this Book of Job is. I'm thinking it may be a Christian book. I'm not sure. So I cannot answer that. But basically, see, when we speak about the Bible is not a single work as we think. There is an Old Testament, there is a New Testament. The Old Testament is basically the Hebrew, the original thing of that the Jews follow, and that itself is not a single book. There are multiple books inside them. And in the New Testament also, there is New Testament, and there are all these different versions by different people. What are they called? I just forgot the name now. So it's a complicated textual structure even in Christianity, and we have a complicated structure in Hindu Dharma also. There is no need to compare always. Uh, Beyond curiosity, there will be elements of commonality, there will be element of difference, right? So we do not need to, and we should never define ourselves either by checking the commonality with Abrahamics or by checking the difference from the Abrahamics. It is good as a general knowledge where we differ, fine, that is good. But our self-definition should not be based on this. We have to define ourselves based on how our own Rishi Parampara has understood our Shastras, how our own Shastras define us, how our own Rishi Parampara define us, right? So I won't go there. It's a slippery slope. I think the Drishta Drishta example was already clarified. Another question is, in our day-to-day life, we introspect, we may not be doing good to the society consciously to earn punyam. Is not doing papam is also considered as punyam. Otherwise, how activities of living can be punyam? See, not doing papam is not doing papam, right? It is not punyam per se. If there is a nisheda vakya which says do not do something, you are avoiding doing it means you are avoiding doing papam. You are not generating punyam by that. For generating punyam, you have to do punya karma, that is dharma karma, right? On the other hand, not doing dharma, there are certain, I mentioned yesterday, there are certain karmas called nitya karmas, which are duty bound to be performed. There the non-performance leads to papam. But in the case of adharma, non-performance does not lead to punyam. It is neutral territory. You can choose this neutral territory saying that I am not doing anything good, but let me not do bad. At least I am safe in some sense. That is true. You're safe in some sense. But to proceed further, you have to also do dharma, right? See, it is true that in our day-to-day life, we live through intuition, we live through our common sense, what we understand instinctively, because our intuition is not pure. You know, our intuition is not pure. The Atmanutushti, we usually apply it independently, but that Atmanutushti is not pure because we are affected by Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, etc. So we do what is beneficial to us in a short term in the Kama, Krodha sense, right? So that our intuition, our Atmatushti is not pure. So our discretion about dharma is also not very accurate. But that is how we live. We have to take decisions like that. So to rectify the situation, it is suggested that we do satsanga, we hear to pravachanas of our acharyas, we have discussions among the like-minded people, and we do swadhyaya. That is most important. We engage with the text. It may be any text. It may be Bhagavad Gita, it may be Ityasa Puranas, it may be some Smritis. Nowadays, you know, there are so many forms of engagement that is available. But you engage with Shraddha, you engage with open mind, so that you keep gaining new perspective in life, new understanding of Dharma, Adharma. You can ask then yourself, if you are familiar with the story of Yudhishthira, if the story of Krishna, story of Rama, you can ask yourself, what would Rama have done? What would Krishna have done? What would our great sages have done in certain situation? So such thinking, when you cultivate, it is not easy. It will take years to cultivate. But when you cultivate that, then your instinct will also become purified. And doing sadhana is also very important. So my prescription for a practicing Hindu is 4 legs: Swadhyaya, Shraddha, Swadhyaya, Sadhana, Sadachara. All 4 are important. You start with Shraddha in the Parampara, in the Rishis, in the Acharyas, in the Shastras. You engage with the Ashra, and then comes the engagement with them in the form of Swadhyaya, engagement with the Shastras. And then comes Sadhana. You do Devata Upasana in some form. You do Dhyana, meditation. You do Pranayama, you do Puja, you do Upasana, Sadhana. And then Sadachara. You practice Achara, you practice Dharma Charana in your life. Thank you, Srinivasa Rao Garu, for your appreciation of the talk. Request you to distinguish between Vidhi and Arthavada. See, Vidhi is a straightforward stipulation. It's a straightforward injunction. So the example I mentioned is about Swarga Kama Yajeta. If you desire Swarga, you have to perform this particular yajna. Or from Taittiriya Upanishad says, Satyam Vada, Dharmam Chara, speak truth, practice Dharma. This is a straightforward stipulation. So grammatically speaking, it is a command. It is an order, or it is a suggestion, guideline. See, the grammatically the vibhakti and all used, it's a commanding tone. I'm not very well versed in the grammar, so I cannot give you a technical explanation. I think the vidhi ling is used, if I am not mistaken, in a vidhi vakya. So it's a command, it's a inducement to act. Direct inducement. There is a direct statement. You do this of the form of do this. Similarly, for Nisheda, it is of the nature of don't do this, avoid this. Of course, it is not always as direct. There are also a little bit indirect happens. But Arthavada is about like a prashamsa, praise, or a ninda. So there are many examples. Again, I don't have examples in handy. But you will find, for example, in the context of certain yajna, if certain patra is to be used, instead of directly saying this patra is to be used, there will be a hymn in praise of using that patra. Or there will be a story about how this thing was done. So Arthavada is what that is. So I mentioned the example of Narada and Yudhishthira in the context of Rajasuya. There what Narada did is actually Arthavada. He narrated a story to Yudhishthira about how his ancestors, the Harishchandra and all, perform Rajasuya Yajna and attain Swarga, Indraloka. So this is Bhutarthavada, a good case of Bhutarthavada, wherein he did the prashamsa of the Rajasuya Yajna by narrating a story about the past event of Harishchandra, who was ancestor of Yudhishthira. I hope this clarifies. You can do a Google search, now you can read more on this Vidhi, Arthavada. These are all material available. You just type it out, you will get more information. The next question is, we criticize Abrahamic religions because they are based on Shabda Pramana. But now you are saying that Dharma Shastra is also based on Shabda. Then what is the difference between Abrahamic religion and Sanatana Dharma? Good question. I don't criticize Abrahamic religion based because they are follow Bible. You may do so. Many Hindus do so because we have been taught to think like that. But I don't do it. Let them follow Bible. I don't mind. See, we need to criticize Abrahamics not because they are following Bible, but because of what they believe, what they follow, what that Bible teaches, and what their actions are. We need to very have clarity of what we are criticizing. We have to criticize the theology of Abrahamics, the theology of Christianity, and not necessarily because not necessarily the fact that they have the Bible as the basis of that theology. If you read my book on menstruation across cultures, for example, the biblical practices of menstruation, the Christian practice of menstruation, it has its origin in Bible. Hindu practices of menstruation has its origin in Veda. And both of them have some similar notion. I'll give you a just very brief example since we have time. In Hindu Dharma, the menstruation is also called as Ashaucha, which is usually translated as ritual impurity. And it arises from a story of Indra gaining Brahmahatya. You know, he kills Vishwarupa and who was benefiting the Asuras. So he incurs a papam of Brahmahatya, and 1/3 of it he requests the women to take over. In Christianity also there is a story about Adam and Eve, who were ate the forbidden apple, so they were cursed. They were removed from the Garden of Eden, and as a result, the Eve was cursed, saying that women will menstruate as a consequence of this sin, the original sin. So now, if you read without any nuance, you will see, oh, the Abrahamics also have the sin narrative. The Veda also says menstruation is sin. Both are same, but both are not same. Because in the Christian theology, in the Christian understanding, a sin is a moral judgment. It is saying that if you are sinful, to say that you are sinful means you are a morally corrupt person, you are a morally degraded person. But in the case of Hindu Dharma, when menstruation is called as Ashaucha, it is not a moral judgment. It is merely a statement of the ritual status of that person, that there is a heightened state of Ashaucha, there is a heightened state of Rajaguna, Rajas, because of which they become ineligible to perform certain ritual action, because ritual action requires Sattva-guna. Please read more on this in my book, because this is not a place to go deep into this discussion. I can just share the link to my book. If you are interested, you can read on this topic. But the point I'm trying to make is, something which appears similar does not mean they are same. They have their Bible. There was a certain way that Bible was implemented hegemonically in the West, but that is not so in our case. We have to concentrate on our own Shastras to understand it, rather than always comparing. I mentioned this before, our self-identity cannot be based on how we are same or different from the Abrahamics. It has to be based on how our own Rishi Parampara has understood ourselves. Sanatana Dharma existed even before Christianity, even before Islam, even before Judaism. We have always existed. So our rishis did not think when they said that Veda is Apaurishaya, Veda is the divine breath. When they conceived of the notion of Dharma and the Smritis and all, they did not say, what did the Christians do? Let me write it something opposite to that. Please let's use our common sense a bit more in this sense. Just because Christians have Bible, that does not negate, does not in any way make Hindu Dharma inferior. If Hindu Dharma also have a Dharma Shastra, Veda is a why do we call the Sanatana Dharma as Vaidika Dharma if we do not have any importance for our Veda as a Pramana Shastra? In any case, I already mentioned the difference also, difference between the biblical commandment and our notion of Vidhi Nisheda, our notion of Dharma Shastra as a Pramana Shastra. Right? We have certain understanding and we have inherited certain understanding. We have to understand that. And that is how we self-define. Even if it is similar to what the Abrahamics do, it does not matter, because what matters to us is what is our Pramana. For our Pramana is Veda, not the Bible. There is no question of neutrality here. Are we an atheist? Are we atheists? If you are atheist, then this whole course is completely meaningless. Because the Manusmriti says that Nastika is excluded from any discussion on Dharma. If you're an atheist, then this discussion is meaningless. If you're theist, if you're Hindu, then what Hindu Dharma is matters. How the Christians what they believe does not. Whether they believe in Bible or not does not. What matters to us is the Abrahamic threat that is there. And that threat we have to understand the theology of the threat, the practicality of the threat. Right? Let us understand let us develop Shatru Bodha in a right way. Let us not use Shatru Bodha as a tool to undermine our own Shastras, undermine our own Swayam Bodha, undermine our own civilization knowledge. Okay, sorry for digressing a lot. This is a question which is loaded, and I hope my answer was useful. Everything is based on common sense, specific and general knowledge. Anything beyond this, I don't know whether there is a question or it's a statement. So I am not familiar with the Christian theology very much beyond what I did research for my books. So I cannot really say about the book's job, jobs. Thank you for that brief introduction to the job. And I have nothing more to add on that. Is it that in Kali Yuga, chanting name of Lord is enough to neutralize papam and get moksha and yagyam? Need not necessarily be performed like they used to be performed Satya, Treta, Yuga, Dwapara. There are two aspects to this answer. One is about the greatness of Bhagwan Nama. There is no doubt that Bhagwan Nama is great, very, very great, and it is one of the most powerful means in Kali Yuga for neutralizing papam, for proceeding further, for gaining Chitta Shuddhi and proceeding further in your spiritual path. However, this does not mean yagya and tapasya and many other things become unnecessary or not necessary. They are valid for those who have the competency to practice, those who are obliged to practice, those who have a duty, obligation to practice. And Bhagwan Nama chanting is also not that easy as we think. Because the Shastras which speak about Bhagwan Nama, they also say that practicing Varnashrama Dharma, practicing the Dharma as given in the Shastra is also a form of Upasana. You cannot say that, every day I will take Bhagwan Nama for 1 hour and then go ahead and commit corruption and crime and such things. That is not bhakti, right? Of course, when you are really into bhakti, in Bhagwan Nama Sankirtana, all the adharmas will eventually, the papa karmas will eventually go out on its own. So the point I'm trying to make is, it is good to practice Bhagwan Nama, but are you stopping your everything that you are doing in life and doing Bhagwan Nama 24/7? If you are doing that, yes, go ahead. You may not need to do anything else. But if that is not that is not the case, you are pursuing your everyday life artha kama, and you are dedicating some time to Bhagwan Nama, then you will have to adhere to dharma in other aspects also. You cannot run away from your responsibilities, your dharma charana, by simply giving the excuse of Bhagwan Nama. So then the best prescription is to live a life of dharma charana, practice dharma in all its effects possible, in all its types possible. And Bhagwan Nama is also one part of that. I hope this clarifies. Another doubt is, if we take bath in holy rivers like Ganga, Yamuna, Godavari, our papams get extinguished. Definitely they get extinguished. Many papam will extinguish, but that does not mean if you go and bath in Ganga once, all the papas of hundreds of your lives will get extinguished. There is a interesting story that the moment you go and take a dip in a bath in Ganga, the papa will extinguish. But the moment you get back onto the floor, you will start accumulating more papam again. And that is true because we do not have Indriya Nigraha. Many times we go and visit a temple and we are gossiping there, we are backbiting there, we are speaking ill of somebody. We do not focus on the Bhagwan, the deity, the Devata who is present in the temple at all, right? We are always complaining, we are doing this, that and all. So if you are doing the same in standing in Ganga or a Yamuna or a Godavari, then will it will really lead to Papakshaya? No. If you go there with Shraddha and Bhakti and surrendering, definitely Papa, some amount of Papa Karma will happen, will be extinguished. There is no doubt about that. But all these activities cannot be done in isolation. They have to be done together. You know, Dharma Charana is a spectrum of things. You do many things, and the total effect will be that Chitta Shuddhi that is attained over many lives. Kindly mention the name of your book wherein Abrahamic and yes, that book I just gave the link, Shabrimala Confusion, Menstruation Across Cultures, Historical Perspective. In this, there is a chapter completely on Hindu notions of menstruation. There is also a chapter on Abrahamic Christian notions of menstruation. There is a chapter on Jewish notion of menstruation. There is a chapter on Islamic notion of menstruation. There is a comparative study. It is very interesting. I'm sure people will find it interesting. You can read that book. I have given the link, or if you want to type it on Google, you can type it as Menstruation Across Cultures, a Historical Perspective. I think there are no more questions. I think Ram Mohanji has he wants to speak or something. Perhaps he could be allowed.
Yeah. Ram Mohanji.
Sir, good morning, and you were dealing was very excellent at the depth. My question, my statement is that everything boils down to common sense, general and specific knowledge. It is my observation, with my experience, what I have. I don't think anything is beyond it. I have just put it for your comments on this.
See, I think
Common sense.
I think
at the reasonable level or at the higher level, if one tries to acquire these things, general knowledge is okay, that we can say Vyavahara and specific knowledge, common sense, we deal everything with common sense, general knowledge, Vyavahara, specific knowledge on whatever particular subject we are interested. I just solicit your comments on this.
Yeah, I think, see, of course, we all act in everyday life through common sense, but common sense also is not very common, you know.
Wonderful.
But on a
Yeah,
serious note, common sense is, of course, not enough, you know. If you have to, if common sense was enough, then what is the purpose of all these Vidyasthanas that our elders have designed? Like, why should we study Dharma Shastra? Why should we study Artha Shastra? Why should we study Kama Shastra, right? It is not just about their specialized knowledge.
Common sense is not enough, sir. Combination of these three. Common sense should be there, general knowledge should be there, specific knowledge on any chosen topics, because our life is not sufficient. The lifetime is not sufficient to acquire the entire knowledge that is available in the universe.
That is true. That is
We
true.
have to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
it somewhere.
definitely, definitely. I have no disagreements there. That everything is necessary. I think there is one more question. In Kumbh Mela, in one satsanga, it was discussed external bath in Ganga has to be supplemented by internal bath satsanga. Definitely, everything has external and internal aspects. There is no doubt about it. If you go to a higher yogic, hatha yogic practices, they will tell about how Tirtha Snana can be done through pranayama and sitting in one place, right? So there are many such descriptions. The point is, this does not depreciate. Please don't have a misunderstanding that somehow the external bath in a Tirtha Kshetra becomes depreciated, or it will not fructify if you do not go through this internal bath. Because they both, internal bath is needed, they are very useful, but thing is very few people are able to do it. But external bath is something which is easily available, which is shastrically mandated as well. So it has its own importance. Both have their own importance. If you are able to actually do both of them, very good for you. Even if you are able to do only the external bath in a Tirtha Kshetra, even that is good enough, because that is also punyam. That also generates punyam. So that is how our dharma is designed. It gives different things, different options for different people, and it's up to us what we can do. Somebody is not able to go to Tirtha Kshetra, they can sit in their home and mentally pray to Lord Vishwanatha, mentally pray to Lord Badrinatha, everybody, without even visiting. Even that mental prayer will reach Vishwanatha and Badrinatha. There is no doubt about it, because Bhagavan is everywhere, right? But if you are able to go, and if you actually go there in the practice of Vrata, like for example in Shabarimala temple, the Ayyappa Swami temple, you can just visit as a visitor, but you can take 41-day Vrata and then visit. There is a qualitative difference in the kind of experience you have in both of them, and as well as in the kind of punya that is generated by both of them, right? I hope this explains. Again, thank you everyone for this engaging me on this topic.
Okay. Thank you very much. Again, another good lecture from you today. We're all very much enlightened. Tomorrow we'll meet again. So now we'll have Prarthana and Janganmana. Ananthanji.
ॐ स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः परिपालयन्ताम् न्याय्येन मार्गेण महिं महिषाः गोब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यम् लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु काले वर्षतु पर्जन्यः पृथिवी सस्यशालिनी देशोऽयं क्षोभरहितः ब्राह्मणाः सन्तु निर्भयाः अपुत्राः पुत्रिणः सन्तु पौत्रिणः अदनाः सदनाः सन्तु जीवन्तु शरदां शतम् सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतंगमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ सर्वेभ्यः नमस्कारः
Dhanyavadamalandi. Now let us recite national anthem. Request all of you to please stand up and sing national anthem along with me. जनगणमनाधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल वंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्ज्वल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे जय हिंद.